Boy, right as I go live, or supposed to go live, my computer fell onto the floor. My laptop fell. Had to reset everything up and make sure everything was stable. Frightened me because I thought maybe I broke my computer. So, as I am talking to myself here, setting up the screen, I cannot see your comments, but do let me know if you are making it live and if you're on the replay. Hashtag replay. I do want to hear from you. Before I jump into tonight's topic, I actually received a couple questions related to repurposing the content, so I do want to address those. Sometimes it's a lot easier to be real specific, pull out the information, address those answers, instead of making you listen to the whole thing and pull the answers out yourself. Right? I can highlight it and then just talk about it again. It's totally fine. Um, so if you have questions like this or anything else that comes up and you don't know where to find it, or you think you know where to find it but not sure which video, um, I can just talk about it again. It's no problem. Um, okay, so I have this app. I can see your comments. If you will talk to me, I love you. Talk to me. um, okay, so those questions. My friend April, she wants to know how frequently should she perhaps rewrite or tweak something, say a social media post that doesn't have a permanent place in a feed, or that does have a permanent place in the feed. So, did not get clarification, but I imagine this is something like a pinned post on the Facebook page, maybe an announcement in a Facebook group, your highlights on your Instagram profile from the stories, make them permanent on there. Um, there's a few other examples, but those are the top like three that came to mind just now. Um, when you want to change them, definitely anytime any changes are made in your business, like you're rebranding or you have some change in your messaging, um, maybe you're more focused in how you're presenting your message, that would be a time to update the post. Um, but rewriting, that's when it's going to depend on how new you are and how much you know your message in the first place. But I would definitely recommend taking a look at what's already there, just so you, I mean, how easy is it to forget? It's nothing is truly set and forget. So I recommend at least being aware of what is said and like if the word choices are still right, if the opening statement still is attention grabbing, or if it's dated um, every 3 to 6 months, and could be a different schedule for you just because of the type of business you have. But April, I think for you, you're pretty consistent for what kind of service you provide and how you help your people. Um, I'm not sure which posts you are thinking of specifically, but I imagine you're probably going to be pretty safe to say like every 3 to 6 months. And then just how often do you want to look at it? You don't have to make changes or tweaks unless you see something you want to test. Um, you have been in business for a while, so A/B split testing is definitely a good idea to try, and then figure out what the results are, and then you want to make the best performing based on whatever your goal is. The more permanent posts that you have featured in your feed. And then let's see, how many times can I just swap a photo before I need to abandon that content and come up with a new angle? I find a lot of times the photo, if it's just one of those decorative things, it's kind of like in my Facebook group, I have a lot of pictures of myself. It doesn't add or take anything from the content itself. If you don't have a good opening statement that calls attention to a specific person with a specific problem or interest someone into your story of like how did she do that, like, or what's going to happen next. These are the kind of things that you draw someone's attention to get them to stop looking elsewhere to pay attention long enough to consume the content. um, and that's really where you're going to want to start with the tweaks and the finding out if that is the content that you want to make sure to keep resharing. um, and then again, it's a lot of those A/B split testing of which image might work better with it, but it's not always necessarily make or break photos. Um, if you are on brand, then your photos will not take away from the message itself. It will be the content itself as far as um, the value and if it's actually getting people to pay attention to it. Um, so I would look at the content first before determining if the photo is something you need to swap out. Um, it would definitely be that opening line. Does it call the attention to your content? All right. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in. April, if that does not make sense, please share your follow-up questions with me in the comments. I'd love to actually answer anything that you have for me. And let's get started. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the content repurposing workflow. Um, let's take a step back here. What is a content workflow? And that's basically just the steps that is going from no, ideas to the actual, like, where things are published, how it's getting created, and where it's going, and at what time. And what time, meaning like every week, it's Monday, it's published on that day at that time. And then on Thursday, you've taken it and made it into something else. And then it's published over here at that day, that time, but it's every week it's happened. And then once it's the week starts over, you start the whole routine, the workflow over again. And that's how you have your content workflow, um, really simplified. Um, You'll want and you'll need a content workflow if you want to make sure that you have your responsibilities defined for all the different steps in the content marketing and creation. There's a lot to be said for having this broken down before you start onboarding any new client new employees or contractors, so that you know exactly what kind of responsibilities are um, possible to pull and pick from and delegate to someone else. Which leads us to you can also see like how many tasks you can delegate. And if you can delegate almost all of it or all of it entirely, then that would be great for you to know, because you've already defined all the responsibilities, all the different tasks that go from the first to the last steps. Um, And when you have it done this way, you can analyze where any of the bottlenecks happen to get stuck. If you have, let's say, a backlog of 20 live stream videos not transcribed because you haven't gone in and listened to the video and manually transcribed it, that would be a bottleneck, because it's going to take time for you or someone you have working for you to actually go in and transcribe the information, especially if you don't do anything. But if you want to actually repurpose that content so that it is um, usable in the written format, then you can find different solutions that might work for it, which could be using a speech to text app, having some software to transcribe. There's all sorts of different solutions for all these different steps, but you can see where the bottlenecks start happening, where the amount of content you want to have published is not able to be maintained based on different steps in the workflow. Um, And by having all of this stuff broken down, you can actually see all of your large projects. Like, for example, if you want to write a huge ebook and you've got some like 100-page ebook in mind, so this is a sizable project. You're going to be able to have the content workflow broken down into manageable steps so that even if it was a huge thing, like a 100-page ebook, you're taking things week by week and you'll eventually have that amount of content to share. And actually, for 100 pages, it could easily be just a couple months or a couple weeks, maybe even a month. And you could have it all ready for you at the end of the whole process. And then when you are able to see all of this, because you're overseeing the process from the overall project you have and then all the manageable steps, you're actually able to make sure that all of your deadlines are being maintained. And so that nothing is falling behind, that you're not getting out of sync with all of your other goals and projects, and that things are working for you because a lot of projects can seem overwhelming if you don't have a management system. And so having the content workflow in place, especially if it's written down and then you're having other people's hands in it, that will help you actually keep things simple and manageable so that everything stays on schedule for what we want in your business. So, how do we create a content management workflow? I got 7 steps here, and I will break out into all of them more thoroughly in other content if I've not already spoke on it, and there are some that I already have. There are step 1, ideation, coming up with the ideas, and the SEO research. So that is the search engine optimization. What's the user's intention with the type of topic? Um, what keywords actually might show up and be worthy of you targeting in your content, that kind of thing. Um, Step 2 is the briefing and outlining. So you understand what questions are already answered in the competitor's content. You know what kind of research and statistics you might want to include in your content. And also that you know exactly what type of headings you want to have included in yours. So you know the direction of your own content, where basically all the questions you're going to answer in that particular post. Then step 3 is defining responsibilities and tasks. You can then determine the roles and then what those roles do with the task. So a writer might do some research, the creation, and editing, whereas an editor could come in and do some editing, fact checking, so the kind of research, and also a publishing side of it. And then you could have an like a there's so many different terms. A virtual assistant who specializes in social media take that content that's been published and actually distribute it. And by doing that, there's a lot of different ways that that person would be able to repurpose the content for social media. And then someone else, perhaps a podcast editor, would be able to pull the content and make it into a episode that you can basically read so that the podcast is ready to be created. I mean, there's so many different responsibilities and tasks that you can have part of or decide to exclude from your particular content management workflow. Number 4 is the actual content creation. So there's the actual execution of the work, basically, and the different steps will be completed, and then just making sure everyone's on the same page as far as where you are at as far as the progress of certain different parts of the project. Let's see, what am I on? Number 5 is the content review and approval. That one will then be basically the editors actually looking into the content, making sure that the um, brand sounds is represented well and all that. Make sure that your word choices are in there well. The SEO is done correctly. There's the actual logic that is applied to it. Like it makes sense from beginning to end. There's a flow that's going on there. It's enjoyable to actually consume the content. Um, there's all of that that goes in there. Um, and then the step 6 is publishing. Um, that has its own workflow to go ahead and have it. And content repurposing, because even once you have the content created, you need to actually promote it. And content repurposing is exactly what will help you with increasing the amount you promote your content versus actually just creating content. Because content marketing really is 20% creating and 80% promotion. And if you are spending a more lopsided amount creating content than promoting it, you're going to be remain hidden. No one's really going to know about you or what you have to say because they're not getting you're not getting in front of them so that they can hear your message. Okay. So there are some best practices for improving your workflow here. You can list every single one, every single task and resource that's available. Software, if it is a step where it's could potentially be overlooked, all of it needs to be included. As if a stranger were to come in off the street and follow the directions of your workflow to be able to actually execute the work. Defining the responsibilities, who has to do what tasks. If you're by yourself, you do all of it. However, if you start outsourcing some of the work to an assistant or to anyone who is a specialized contractor, then you'll want to make sure that it's clear who's responsible for what in the whole process. Due dates are important so that you can remain consistent and that everyone is on the same page as to when something is needed. A solid review and approval process is necessary. It can't just be a, hey, it's done, and then nobody actually looks at it again. And hey, maybe it's getting published. Did someone actually publish it? I don't know. No, you need to actually make sure that you get in there and actually review the content that's done. And perhaps it's not you, but someone that you want to have to manage the review and approval process. And then finally here is using the right tools. You've got to have the right tools for your workflow. And they are, I didn't count these out. Six looks like categories of types of tools to use for your workflow. There is the content workflow software to get you started. This could be really simple or more complicated, but ultimately you just want to make sure that you have the idea is out of your head and onto some sort of schedule. It could be a calendar. It could be a Gantt chart. It could be a table. Like you just want something to get the ideas, the workflow out of your head and onto the actual page so that someone else can understand what you are thinking. Next is the content review and approval software. That would be something like Grammarly. There's Hemingway app, ProWriter Aid. There's a lot of different tools that are available for helping you review and approve content. There is the actual content creation software, anything from like just a Google document. If you are more of a Microsoft person, if you enjoy creating content directly in Canva and perhaps you operate out of that every month, then that would be something for you because not all content that we're talking here is necessarily written content. Um, let's see, then what are we on? 4 is the content planning. So your scheduling or perhaps your content calendar. Just making sure that you know when things are due, what is going to be published and when it's going to be published. That way you can actually be on the same page as for what's the next to execute project. Then the content management software, that is more of the WordPress, Squarespace. Um, I'm personally exploring a new website. It's called New Zenler. They now have a blog feature. They didn't when I first started at the beginning of the year, but I knew that they were going to be adding in the blog feature soon. So that's now available. That would be an example of one. There's a few different other ones that's going to be a lot less known, but WordPress and Squarespace are the most common for good reason. Um, and then content publishing software. Again, that's going to be potentially WordPress, Squarespace, but then are you publishing on Facebook? Are you publishing on Instagram? Are you on YouTube? Like there's other places to publish content with. Okay, so what is the minimum amount of content repurposing that you should do? So you know how 80% of your content marketing needs to be promotion and 20% needs to be creation. I don't know how much time you have in your business, but if you have, let's say, 25 hours a week that you work, that is 2 hours of creating content a week. And then, oh, what's my math on that one? That leaves 8 hours then for promoting the actual content. And that can be a copy and paste of some parts. It can be links to other places. However, it also includes pulling out sections and republishing this small portion of what is already shared. Or if you work the other way, you can go from a smaller piece of content, pulling that and adding it to something else and posting a larger piece of content. So it could be a small quote or a question at the beginning of the week, and by the end, you have a whole blog post. Or you could start at the beginning of the week with the blog post, and then by the end of the week, you just got the quote that you're going to put up. And there's both ways work just fine. It's whichever way works for you. But you're going to be spending a majority of your time, and therefore, it'll depending on how much you are actually putting into your work. You just want to keep that in mind. 40% of your overall work time will be in marketing. 80% of that time, 80% of that marketing time will be in the promotion. That is the ideal metric. Of course, reality doesn't always work out that way, but you want to be close to that. So if you don't know what you're doing right now, I highly recommend keeping track of your time. You can use tools like Toggle, Toggl, I believe is it spelled. It's not a full like English word. Um, and it just you start and stop whenever you start doing a thing that you're working on. It doesn't have to be paid for. It can be even a simple stopwatch on your phone. Pretty much all smartphones have a stopwatch feature. If you want to keep track of it, you can simply keep adding to that time and stop it each time you are done, and then resume the timer when you get back to the work. Now, that only works for one at a time. So, depending on what it is that you're wanting to keep track, I definitely recommend keeping track somehow of your time, as that's where you can start improving. So, now that we are pretty clear on all of this workflow stuff, how do we make it easy to repurpose the content? This is ultimately going to start with what is easiest for you. Are you a writer or are you a speaker? Is it easier for you to work off a transcription or would you prefer a script? Those are similar questions, but they're actually different. No matter the content that you have and which way you prefer, you can then repurpose the content, making sure to record, to save, you edit from the original and customize it based on its new format and placement that you're going to put it, and then you share it and you just do it over and over again. You can start with having the introduction at the beginning, the middle is pretty clear, and then the end, you wrap it all up. At the beginning, you provide the teaser for what you're going to talk about. At the end, you summarize everything you just talked about. That is a great way to make sure that you actually um, have your topic overall laid out so that you can almost rip from one place to another, a video to blog post, or if it is going to be a live stream to a IGTV recording, different options, similar formats. All right, and then I've got some 5 pretty simple approaches to repurposing your content. And this is going to be pick and choose which adventure works best for you. Have you ever had those pick choose your adventure books? I love it when you're like, if you choose this adventure, go to page 3. If you choose that adventure, go to page 72. You just flip through the pages. I would read those books until I read every single adventure. And I actually sometimes would work backwards so I could get to find out like what decision made it to that ending that I had not been able to find until this point. But that's just me. I just like picking apart things like that. Anyhow, so approach number 1 for repurposing your content is to make your content visual. So if you and or your audience is a highly visual learning based type of group of people, then I want you to go ahead and focus on more visual aspects. This can include images, videos, it can be specifically for Pinterest, YouTube, perhaps live streams, and that is going to help you increase the visual aspects of the content that you are creating. However, maybe you need more movement, so something that's quick and fast paced, right? Sometimes the content that's like a webinar can and be a great improvement because you've got the slides. They keep moving. Speaking of slides, actually, slide decks also work. So if you wanted to do like a slideshow presentation, I know that LinkedIn has there's a few ways you could have it included, like on your website for a slide deck presentation, where similar to a webinar, these slides are available, and you just kind of panel through. But similarly, your video content could still be something that it moves, especially if you've got some sort of visual aid and get someone up and moving. Then approach number 3 is making the content super digestible. And by digestible is making sure that the content is smaller. You're not trying to cram all the information in that this one probably is starting to feel like right now, right? This one, if you're going to make content digestible, it would be simply having one part to the whole picture. So if I were to instead talk only about making content digestible, that would be a meta example of making content digestible out of this whole topic. But there's so much about repurposing content that I've not talked about yet with you that I wanted to make sure to share. And then we can dive into the details as I hear back from you as to if you had any other questions on this. Another example of digestible content is quotes. Your own quotes, like you quote yourself, totally a thing to do. Or if you want to quote someone else who's really famous, like, I don't know, Gandhi or Simon Sinek. I mean, these are just a few examples. You can quote them, a lot of people will know them, but like quoting yourself actually would give yourself a authority, because if you said that and then you quote yourself again somewhere else, then your information is actually being shared further. And then, of course, questions are another way to make the content digestible, so that you actually, with questions, would get engagement. They're not being overwhelmed with a bunch of information. They can actually answer you pretty quickly and easily, usually. That's the goal with most questions. Approach number 4 here, we have the making content easy to find. And that basically is, how do you get yourself in front of other people? Do you use hashtags? Are you using keywords? Do you tag or categorize your content? Do you have a really good description on your stuff so that people actually understand what it is that you're providing them? These are different ways for making your content easy to find, because yes, they could search for it. And if you have a video or a podcast episode that's not very well defined or tagged or described in their description section, they're not going to be able to find it, because it's not like the search algorithm can also search through your voice recordings. Unfortunately, AI is not there yet, but I'm sure we will be inside of, gosh, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was inside of 10 years, we'll be able to search for the things that you have recorded in your videos. Technology is changing that fast. But until then, you still need to do the work yourself and adding in the actual words and the descriptions, the tags, the categories, and etc. And then finally, approach number 5, you could love on your content so that it lives forever. Not actually living forever, because ultimately the internet's going to change somehow, some way, someday. But this is more in reference to working on your search engine optimization. You could do some tweaks to actually focus on that front of things. Now, search engine is really a broad term. That can be Pinterest, it could be Google, it could be YouTube. They're all search engines. But the way that you would update that content to be optimized a little bit better would definitely differ based on the different platforms on which you are trying to optimize for. Now, if you optimize for one and not for the other, that doesn't mean you won't show up for the other platforms. It just means you're focusing on the one. And ultimately, that's going to be the method that will help you win, because you won't be trying to spread yourself too thin. And then you can find a system to automate repurposing of your content. Yes, you can automate the repurposing of your content. There are a few schedulers that exist that already republish posts that had been published in the past. And that's what a lot of what I mean here, but there's a few different other ways. Even if you manually copied and pasted from older posts to a newer scheduled post, that it can work, but there's a few tools that can do the work for you. I know Buffer and I think Meet Edgar are just a couple examples of being able to republish older posts. And that's actually all I've got for you today. So if you have any questions, let me know. I am here to help you as always, and it looks like I have a couple minutes here, actually. If you have not gotten my email, I wanted to make sure that you did see I have a friend who's relaunching her Facebook group, and it is the entrepreneurs and bloggers in this spotlight. So if you wanted to get in, she is throwing a huge relaunch party this week. This is March 1st through March 5th. And I am speaking tomorrow at noon Eastern. So if you want to join me or any of the other presentations that's going to be, I mean, I didn't even count it. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 50 people, though, that's presenting on all sorts of topics. So if you have any interest in blogging, podcasting on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, on your self care, cultivating confidence, on your mindset, um, that's just a few of the examples, but there's like a few other categories I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head. If you're interested in any of that, go ahead and join in the party. We are actually contributing some gifts, and there are, last I checked, over $15,000 in giveaways available this week right now. So go ahead and join in. Um, Again, that is Amber. Uh, Temerity is how she's been on herself. Her last name is Losey, though. And she is the host of this it's hashtag EBS relaunch party. And so if you want to join in, the fun's happening. I am giving away a seat to a content planning day course of mine that may help you in what you want. If you would like a chance to win that, she's got the contest going on over there. Again, it's happening. My presentation is tomorrow at noon Eastern time. I think that is all the matters that are happening here. I'm not seeing any questions so far. So go ahead and let me know if you've got what you need here today. I will be coming up with the examples real soon, and this is going to include a few different workflows, how you go from different directions of smaller to larger pieces of content or larger to smaller, how you go from audio to video, or how do you go from blog post to video. There could be all sorts of different examples, including or excluding any social media. And there's just, oh my goodness, the options are so varied. You can truly have your content wherever, however you want. And I'm just going to come up with a few examples that are, I see, most popular, that are most well received. If you have a specific platform or perhaps an idea that you would like me to explore with you, go ahead and let me know. I would love to have that so that you can perhaps take the workflow that I put together just out of the fun and fancy free afternoon that I have, right? Um, and that's all my housekeeping notes. So thank you for joining me. I had a wonderful time with you. I will catch you next time, and you have a wonderful day. Thank you.